It is really a great privilege to introduce Will, or Cliff as he's better known. Will's had a really interesting life, as you'll hear, with lots of different careers, a church minister in a very rundown area and also in a more well-to-do area. But also he's been a Keep Fit instructor here in this hall. He's also now, his career has been as a Cliff lookalike. And Cliff, Will's had so much going for him, with a beautiful wife called Claire, a daughter, a stepson, and more than something like 5,000 followers on Facebook. And yet he was running on December the 30th last year and suddenly fell flat on his face. And this is his first engagement since then. So we do welcome you, Cliff, as if, or dear Will. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
And to those of you watching, hello, whatever time of day it is. This is a bit strange for me, not just because it's been 10 months or so since my last kind of public engagement. I'm not turned on, am I? Okay. Is that better? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So 10 months since my last public engagement. It's bizarre because whenever I do shows over the years, I have lots of like really happy ladies who love Cliff Richard, and lots of miserable husbands because they used to get dragged along. Because most of the guys loved Elvis more than Cliff. In fact, that was even said to me this morning. I preferred Elvis. Well, that was a regular thing I used to get. And so what would happen is I'd get a load of guys, but it would look like a bit like you do this morning. No joke. Just basically looking as if they'd been dragged, but actually by the end of the show they'd all join in and we'd have some fun. And they'd come up to me and said lovely complimentary things like, "I never liked Cliff Richard until I saw you." So that was really good. Yes, so as Jess alluded to at the beginning, my career came to a sudden halt on the 30th of December. I've been doing a show in Costa del Great Yarmouth on the 29th of December on a run of Christmas shows, so I'd only missed one night for a whole December, because December is the end of November, and December for me, especially being a Cliff Richard tribute act, was a very busy time, as you can imagine, because lots of people out there in the world put Cliff and Christmas together. And so it was a very busy time. I've been working solid right throughout that time. And I got up, because I'm a runner, and I got up that morning on the 30th of December. I was due to do a gig here in Cromer on that night, so it was nice to be local. And I got up and did my normal run, and just getting close to the end, about 100 yards from home, and don't remember anything else. And I woke up basically in hospital, and after lots of tests and stuff over the next few weeks, it turned out that I had cancer. And it's actually metastasized in my brain, so which they class as brain cancer, and there's nothing they can do about that. So they've given me a terminal prognosis. So smile, come on. Things couldn't be much worse on their score. But you know, for me, I've always been a cup half full person. I've always lived my life in an optimistic way, always looking forward. I've been blessed in so many ways. I live in a lovely village of Overstrand, where my bedroom window looks out into the sea every morning. And so I can't have much more blessings than that, even though this thing is in. But I'm a very strong Christian. I also believe in a God that can do miracles. So I'm not giving up on anything just yet. And even the people who follow me are optimistic that one day I'll return to doing Cliff as if. And I'm optimistic about that too. So this is my first gig in 10 months. So I think it's only right that we do a Cliff song to start off with. Okay. So one you can all sing along with, all right? If you want to, okay? This isn't a church meeting, so you don't have to stand. Okay, right, so here we go. One you all know, okay? I got myself crying, talking, sleeping, walking, living dog. Got to do my best to please, just got shoes, living dog. Got her overnight and that's why she satisfies my soul. I got the one and only walking, talking, living dog. Take a look at her hair. It's real, and if you don't believe what I say, just feel. Lock her up in a trunk, so no big punk can steal her away from me. Get down. And you died to say it with you. Got myself a crying, talking, sleeping, walking, living dog. I can't do my best to please her, just got she's a living dog. Got her overnight, that is why she satisfies my soul. I got the one and only walking, talking, everyone say, living dog. That's great, thank you very much. Absolutely fantastic. Brilliant. It's just great to be here this morning. I landed in Overstrand 8 years ago, and I just love it here so much. A beautiful part of the world to live, isn't it? I only ever came to Norfolk previously to do shows, but being over here and living over here is great, and it's lovely to be here. I used to do Keep Fit classes in here. Every Monday morning I used to have a Keep Fit class for about 20 or so ladies. Who all saw the fact that I was supposed to be speaking here this morning, and they all wanted to come along, and they were a bit put out that they couldn't, and I suggested that maybe they go to find some beards and come in and try and fit in more bit, but there you go. It's great. So yeah, my whole life as a tribute act was squashed in and was sandwiched in the middle. There was 10 years as a Baptist minister of 2 churches, one in Portsmouth and one in Leicestershire. And I'll come back to that if I get a chance in a sec. But my whole life has been taken up by doing a Cliff Richard tribute. It all began because people at the time, even though it may not look like it now, which is down to drugs mainly, not illegal ones, but very much people kept coming up to me and said, "Has anyone ever told you look like Cliff Richard?" And I was always a singer. I was starting my whole career in show business, and it seemed a natural thing for me to do was to get involved as a Cliff Richard tribute act. There was lots of opportunities for me. Does anyone like the Shadows? Yeah, well, I've worked with several Shadows tribute bands. In fact, one of my best friends, Julian, plays Hank Marvin guitar, and he comes over here to Cromer regularly to come and visit, and we have some time together playing music and singing, doing some songs. And he's also a Christian too, which is very helpful, very encouraging. So I've worked with them. I've done theatres and the odd cruise ship and all kinds of things like Warner's holiday centres and you name it, the fact I've been there. I've even turned my hand in recent years to add in some comedy to the act. The thing is that it was always a fun thing to do in the first place anyway. That's why the name Cliff As If came along. It was always a light-hearted tribute. And in recent years, I was able to go to great shows of comedians that I got to know really well and pinch their jokes and make them my own. And one of them's here today, Mr. Pat Neely over there. He's, you all know Pat, do you?
Yeah.
Lots of Pat, the Norfolk Nut. And I actually he gave me lots of his jokes, which I made my own over time, and that was a fantastic thing for me. And it really, really helped me to develop my acting to something funny as well as musical, which came in handy in stage when I did stage shows. We toured with a show called Billy Meets Cliff. Any Billy Fury fans in the room? A few. So there was a friend of mine, John, and him and I toured together with a band. We did this Billy Meets Cliff show where Cliff was in Billy Fury on stage, and we shared this thing together, which was good, really good fun. Now, I don't know if you are aware I don't know if you watch much television at all. It's something over this last 10 months so that it's become a new thing for me. Because being on the road a lot, I never really get to watch much TV. However, over the last 10 months, I've become a bit of, not an addict, but it's all new to me. Things have been going on. And one of the things that I've noticed, that the people, the individuals that get through to certain levels of those shows, it starts to develop into every individual having their life story. In fact, it's known as a backstory. Have you heard of that, a backstory? So, for instance, and I've got first-hand experience of this from myself in this year. My daughter, Hattie, she's nearly 21 now, and she auditioned for a TV show. And she got through the auditions and now is in the TV show, which is going to be filmed, which is going to be live on primetime TV in the end of January, beginning of February. Now, I can't tell you which one, okay, because you're not allowed to do that. And I know this is going to be live anyway online, so I'm even more constrained to be able to say which show it is. But she's going to be on the show on a primetime TV at the end of January, beginning of February, doing her act. Okay. Now, what happens is that during that show, because she's got to a certain level in that show, they had to show a bit of her life story or her backstory. And what they do in the backstory, they talk about where she came from and her family and her music and blah, 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 blah. And they make a video of that. And when she comes on stage on TV at the show she's going to be on, before she comes on, they will show it. Now, if any of you have been watching The Voice, for instance, which is a very recent one, that's just finished, the people who got through to certain levels and that were shown that. If it's Britain's Got Talent, they show that too. So you with me? You understand what I'm talking about, a backstory. Back in 2010, I also was given the opportunity to do this. There was a show on BBC One called The One and Only, and I was asked to audition for that. And what they did is they sat me down. I went for the audition and everything was going great. And I actually believed that I was going to be on TV. And they sat me down and wanted to go through my backstory to prepare that for when they got around to doing the filming. I think I said something in my backstory that must have upset them. Because when it came to it, they actually put me on what they called, well actually, we're going to put you on a reserve list. Now, that was fine, that was okay, that was good for me. One thing they did do though, quite cheekily, and I don't know how they managed to work this in, is that at the beginning of every show, they have like images of all the people that are taking part in the show. And they like come up in a little on your screen, a little square, and then that square would disappear to the right, and then the next person, that square. And all the people that were on the show had all their faces on the screen, and it'd all be put up, and eventually the screen would be full of all the people that were in the show. So all the people that were in the show were on that screen, including me, who wasn't in the show. But they still had me on the screen every Saturday night, and I was a bit put out by that. Anyway, so so I actually wasn't in the show. I think the one thing that may have gone against me was my faith. Because the one thing about a backstory is that a backstory is to cover the story of your life and where you've come from. And for me, in my life, my whole backstory was Jesus. And I don't think they liked that very much. I don't think it quite fit in with what they were looking for. And I couldn't avoid it, because that was what had led me throughout the paths of my life, was my faith. The most important aspect of my faith then, right, and even now in the midst of having what they call brain cancer, with a terminal prognosis, is my faith. It's the thing that has sustained me all those years, and still sustains me now. So that's my backstory. That's the crux of everything that has sustained me for all those years. So maybe that was the thing that prevented them from putting me in, because let's face it, it wouldn't be a very interesting backstory in modern terms. It wouldn't have fitted in with their little box for exactly what they wanted to put on. Now, if I did that today, it might change. But like Hattie, who's gone into this program she's going to be on next year, the whole thing may have changed right now, because they may have come to me and said, well, tell us your backstory. Well, you've got cancer. Oh, that's a story that they'd be very interested in. And that's something that they can make something of, and get everyone to feel sorry for me, and get everyone to feel, oh, well, we've got to vote for Will because he's got cancer. Well, all that kind of stuff, maybe it would fit in the box. It didn't do then what I said back then, and maybe that, as I said, that was the reason. But anyway, the fact is I've gone on since. I wasn't bothered about that, by the way. In fact, I was absolutely relieved, because one of the things that's happened to me over the years, I've become quite camera shy. And the thought of actually being on prime time TV or something that frightened the life out of me. Now you're probably wondering, well, how can you be camera shy when you're standing up in front of hundreds, week in, week out, doing the show? Well, the thing is, it was the truth. It's always been the truth. Anyone who's in the musical world, or in theatre and stuff like that, one of the things that you regularly hear them say is they never watch themselves. They never listen to themselves. It's one of the toughest things to do. I am my worst critic. I can't stand it, and I won't watch this either that's being recorded, because it's just crazy. I don't know what it's a psychological barrier that goes on. But the fact is that people have still come along to see my shows over the years. People still come along and enjoy the concept of Cliff as If and everything we do. I say we because it's not just about me. There's been other people involved as well. The people I've worked with, musicians I've worked with, sound people I've worked with, other bands I've worked with over the years. They've all been a very important part of what's going on in my world and in my life. And I've missed it. These last 10 months have been tough, because I've had to readapt. Everything's changed. Life itself has taken on a whole new meaning in various ways. I've had to subject myself to needles, which I can't. Does anyone else hate needles? My veins have disappeared. They get you in. At first, when they started taking bloods and giving me, all these things that they pump into you. At first, it was no problem. They'd go in and they'd put a needle in my arm, and it would do. For some reason, now my veins have said, we've had enough of this. We're going to hide. And it's like it's gone from that little bit where they say, oh, you just got to feel a little bit of that bit when they give you your blood, or they give you the injection.
A little scratch.
Little scratch.
Yeah.
It's gone from that to look away. That's what it's gone to, because we can never. It's absolutely not. So everything's changed. Everything's changed. But the one thing that is still the same, that has never changed, is my backstory. Because the fact is that the Jesus who was in my life all those years ago is still very much active in my life today. And like I said before, that's the thing that sustained me. That's the thing that's kept me going. And that's still going to be my backstory till the day that I die. And whether that happens sooner or later, well then that's the way it should be. At least I know where I'm going. And that was what makes me happy. To me, it's a kind of promotion. That's the way I look at it. I'm not afraid, I've got no fear. There is a current song, a worship song, which has become a part of my life. It's a song, those of you who go to church regularly will know it's a song called In Christ Alone. And the opening lines of the last verse, it says, no fear, no guilt in life, no fear in death. This is the power of Christ in me. And that to me, that's the battle. That's what makes everything worthwhile. No guilt in life, no fear in death. The guilt in life, well, Jesus dealt with that on the cross. That's what that was all about. That all the things, all the sin, all the bad stuff, all the things that I've messed up on has all been dealt with. And there's no fear in death because of that. Because he's set up a place for me in heaven, just as he has for every person who accepts him in their lives. Now, ready. And there's a Bible verse that I carry around with me. It's from Hebrews 13, verse 5. It says this: I will never leave you, I will never abandon you. And Jesus said that to the disciples, didn't he? He said, I will never leave you, I will never. There'll never be a time in your life that you walk on this earth, right, that I will ever be away from you. I will always be with you. Don't fear. There's no need to fear. So why should I now? Okay, things have changed for me. Things have been dramatic. There's been an awful shift of something that I was doing that I loved to do, I enjoyed to do. It was my whole life was being on the road, entertaining, having fun, learning new things, learning new jokes, thanks to Pat. And all these new things were happening, and suddenly, bang, that all stopped. Everything had just changed in my physical world, but spiritually, nothing's changed. Everything's just as much alive as it ever was. Now, I am feeling very nervous today. I am used to being before crowds and crowds of people. For 10 years, I was a pastor, and I pastored 2 churches. As it was already been said, the first church was down in Hampshire, in Portsmouth. Does anyone know Portsmouth at all? You know it quite well. Well, we was in there. The church itself was in an area called Somerstown. And Somerstown is a bit like Beirut on a good day. We had troubles. We had all the troubles, all the social difficulties that go on were there in that area. There was ever anything bad that you could think about society was going on in and around, and yet we had a vibrant congregation right in the middle of that, and my role was tough but rewarding, being involved in so many things there. And then the Lord gave me an open door to move to Leicestershire to take over quite a rural church, which was completely the opposite. It couldn't have been more far removed. It was a very affluent area, a wealthy church. Everyone was employed. There was none of the social problems that we had that were going on in Portsmouth. Completely at the other end of the spectrum. And even though they were poles apart, there was something that bound all of them together. people in that church, like me, had a backstory of Jesus to get them through their lives. Because one thing I've discovered is that no matter how poor or how rich you might be, as my mum used to say when we were little, not sure how this lots of you are older like me, so no disrespect, but my mum used to say at the end of the day we all leave a rim in the bath. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
That's what she used to say. That we're all, when we all die, and we all live on this earth, and there's something that keeps us all grounded. Because we're all the same, really. And Jesus meets us at that place. No matter how rich or how poor we may be, and he brings us together and gives us that meeting place at the cross. And from there we go forward with him, and he becomes our backstory, and he shapes our lives. And faith doesn't take away the problems, but there's someone there to help us through them. And that's the most important thing. Right, so I'd just like to, before I finish, just do a little song for you. Now Cliff did this song when he put his whole career on the line in the 60s when he got saved. And lots of people were saying to him, you know, you need to keep this quiet because you've got millions of fans. If it comes out, you've done this, then you're going to lose lots of them. And he said, well, I'm willing to take that chance. I'm willing to make that choice to come out as a Christian, as a born-again believer. And the first time that he did that publicly was at Billy Graham, at a Billy Graham crusade. And he sang the song, the first song he's ever sang as a Christian in public was this song. It is no secret what God can do, what he's done for others, he'll do for you. With arms wide open, he'll pardon you. It is no secret what God can do. There is no lie, for in his light you'll never walk alone. Always be at home, wherever you may roam. There is no power can conquer you when Christ is on your side. Just take him at his promise, don't run away and hide. It is no secret what God can do, what he's done for others, he'll do for you. With arms wide open, he'll pardon you. It is no secret what God can do. One more time. It is no secret what God can do, what he's done for others, he'll do for you. With arms wide open, he'll pardon you. It is no secret what God can do. It is no Pick up and drop off. Thank you.
It is wordy. Hey, Cliff, we're just really grateful that you bared your heart this morning and told us of what you've been up to and what you, about your family and yourself and your work and the Lord who is so precious to you. We do have time now for some questions, so if you've got a question, would you raise your hand and Richard can get a microphone to you and we'll answer that question, I'm sure, wonderfully.
Will, have you ever met Cliff?
Yes. Several occasions, but I'll tell you about the first time because that was the most important one. That was he was celebrating 50 years in show business, 2008, and he was doing a live radio broadcast in London with Gloria Hunniford. And I'd been invited to be a part of this day of celebration of his golden anniversary of life in show business. As someone who made a living out and made a career out of Cliff Richard's music. So what happened was that he was supposed to be on first in the morning and I was following him. What happened was that he was flying in from Dublin where he'd been rehearsing with his band, but there was fog at Heathrow. So they got delayed. So they changed everything around and I was in my hotel room and I got a phone call saying, we're going to change it around. Can you come in first before Cliff? And then when Cliff's arrives, he come in. So I did. So I went down and rushed all down and got a cab and everything, got in there. And I did my bit. And then Cliff arrived. And as he came in, they said, because he'd been listening to me talk in the taxi, talking. And so he'd said to the guy, can you make sure that Will stage doesn't rush off? Because I'd like to meet him. So what happened was that they took me through to the manager's office and they fed me, gave me coffee and whatever. And I sat there for an hour while he was being interviewed by Gloria. And anyway, so he came to walk in. Now the radio station thought, well, we'll record this meeting. And if you go on my website, cliffasif.com, you'll hear that introduction. So what happened was that he came in the room. And I was so nervous because I've been doing this for many years and he'd always been a kind of a hero of mine, not just for his music but also because of his Christian faith as well. And he just walked in the room and he looked me straight in the eye and he came up and I'll use Jeff, and he said, hi, it's nice to meet me. So that was our first meeting. That was in 2008, and I've had the opportunity since then to meet him several times. Thank you.
Anybody else with a question?
Just a quick one.
Just a minute.
Just a quick one. You mentioned you got into jokes, right?
Yeah.
Now, every Sunday, I tell a joke, one of my own jokes in here, to someone in London who's bedridden, right? This is a seaside joke. Try and remember this one. There's an old cottage on the beach, and a woman on the top shelf, she's got a box of Tide. Yeah, a box of Tide, yeah?
I remember Tide, yeah.
Right, okay. Now, she's got loads of washing to do, and her son goes to school and she goes out. When she comes back, the box of Tide is gone. When he comes back from school, she goes absolutely mad and she sends him to bed. So the husband comes in, I've sent Jimmy to bed because I need to get this washing done and I can't do it, the box of Tide's gone. He said, madam, you live by the coast, the tide goes in and the tide goes out.
Very good.
Try to remember that one for seaside.
Well done. Thank you, Pat. Have you made a note of that one?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's great. I try and remember as much as I can. The tide comes in and the tide goes out. That's okay, excellent. Thank you.
Anybody else with a question?
Will, can you tell us how you transferred
so before I was a minister, I've always been from school. I was in show business. I trained as a dancer originally, and I was doing summer shows and stuff all over the country, and doing singing and dancing. Then I got the call to ministry because I didn't come from a church family, Christian family at all. My path into church life became completely independently when I was younger. During the time of I had my own dance company, and it was in 1992 that I felt it was important for me to go into church ministry in the first place. So with my dance company, we did our final show at the Royal Albert Hall, which was a great way to go out, you know. And then I went to theological college. I did 3 years, and then had a little break after that, and then went into full-time ministry. And then, like I said, went to Portsmouth first, and then Leicester afterward. But during the time I was at Leicester, by the way, my nickname in both churches was Cliff, and everyone would. And part of my draw, getting new people in the church, was putting on little concerts every now and again as Cliff. It was because one of the things that those of you who are very much involved in church life and evangelical church life, where you're trying to reach out to others, it's hard work, isn't it? And trying to make that easier was by doing a Cliff Richard concert in your own church, because local people used to enjoy that kind of thing. So whether they were involved in church or not, whatsoever, they come along. So I used to put on just little concerts for people in the church and get local communities involved, people coming in. So that's what happened. Anyway, so back in 2007, I was in Leicestershire, my church, and I was doing a funeral service for a guy in my church who was a local folk musician and well known. In fact, he was so well known on the worldwide scale in the folk music industry that he was the first person. Do you remember Joni Mitchell?
Yes.
He was the first person to bring Joni Mitchell into the UK. So his name was Rex Brisner, and he died, and I was doing his funeral. And at that funeral, there was a local musical director who came up to me at the end of the service and said, "I'll use you again, Jess, you can be me." And he came and said, "That was a lovely service. Has anyone ever told you look like Cliff Richard?" Well, I said, "Yeah, sure, it happens all the time." Blah, blah, blah. To cut long story short, he knew that I did a bit of music as well. He phoned me up one day and he said, "Look, I'm doing this gig at this music centre in Leicester, and would you come along if I do a couple of Cliff songs and just guest for me?" And I said, "Well, yeah, sure, I'll do that, that's fine." So we went along and sang Living Doll, as we did before, and Moving as well. And afterwards he kept in touch with me, and he was quite well connected in local radio and TV around the Midlands. And he kept phoning me up and saying, "Can you come and do this? Can you come and do that?" And eventually I got the itch to go back to it. Now, so I was kind of torn. I was working as a full-time minister at a Baptist church. I was also, when I wasn't doing that, Cliff that become my hobby in life. The thing I was doing outside the church, but it started to interfere with my church life. What happened was we used to have, in the East Midlands, we had a group of ministers we would meet quite regularly. And they all knew that I did this Cliff thing, and they were booking me to do concerts at their churches. So what happened was, obviously my little congregation were getting a bit peeved because I was going to these other churches all over the East Midlands to do shows. But what happened then was that the national meetings that we had, they caught on to this, and they started booking me to do shows. So I ended up travelling all over the country doing Baptist church Cliff Richard chose for their ways of reaching out to their communities. But then, the people from other denominations, like the Pentecostals and the Church of England, they were coming along to these things, and they started booking me to do their shows. So I ended up Fridays and Saturday nights away in Gravesend or South Wales or wherever it was, Scotland, doing shows for these churches. And if more than often, if it was a Saturday, they'd book me to stay over and do something in the service on Sunday morning. If they hadn't booked me, I'd roll home from doing that gig, wherever it was, and then stoically get up to walk into my own church the next morning to do the service. Absolutely wiped out from doing this. And you can imagine this caused a bit of conflict because I was neglecting my duty to my own congregation. It just wasn't fair. So I had to make a choice in the end of what to do. Circumstances worked out. They ended up me having to do that anyway. So that's what happened. So there was the transition for me going back into full-time showbiz again from being there. Saying that, however, one thing that's always stayed with me, apart from the faith, is my yearning to have a pastoral heart. And I find myself right now in a situation where I've become like an online pastor. Even though I can't see many people are contacting me on a daily basis, and I have half a dozen now, every day, or I spend half an hour to an hour with on the phone or online, and helping them in their Christian walk, in their lives. So I've never given it up, it's just done in a different way now.
Thank you. Any other question? Perhaps two more if you have them.
Which is your favourite Cliff song and why?
My favourite Cliff song.
And why?
And why? If I could answer that question, the amount, and if you know the old saying that if you could have a pound for every time someone asks you that question, I've never been able to answer it. For the simple reason is, there's just far too many. Cliff has released hundreds of songs. He's recorded hundreds of songs, not just of his own, but of others too. And so whenever I've been doing shows, there's just so many to choose from. And for instance, let me give you an example. Summer Holiday. We all know, everyone knows Summer Holiday. Even kids who don't even know who Cliff Richard is know the song Summer Holiday. So, I said that there would never be a show go by without me doing that song, because that's standard. Because if you want to get people on your side, you sing songs they know. I would always do that song. And I'd get fed up with it, to be honest, because it was boring. Right? And I think, well, maybe I wish I didn't have to do this every time. But then someone comes up who does the backing with a new kind of twist on the musical score and the backing of that gives it life and brings it back to a place where, well, I can't wait to do this song again. You know, it's things like that change in music. And so therefore Summer Holiday, towards the end, when I was coming towards the end, I had a new production done for me, a new version done for me, and it just brought it to life for me. It became a great song to do. I was looking forward to doing it again. So that became a great song to do. I think if I was to be given the old, if you're on a desert island and you could only take one song with you for that scenario, what would it be? And I suppose I have to go back to 1979. Cliff's, there's a bit of trivia for you now. 1979, Cliff released a song, okay? And it was his biggest selling hit of all his career. So you tell me, what song it was.
Congratulations.
No, that was 1968. 1979. You were all around then, come on. Bachelor Boy, no, that was in the 60s as well.
Wasn't on the Lord's Prayer on it, was it?
No, that was the millennium year, that was 2000. Huh? No, that was in the 80s. Okay, go on, one more. Devil Woman. It could have been that, but it wasn't. That was 1976. 1979 was We Don't Talk Anymore. It's so funny. Okay, and that was his biggest selling hit of his whole career. 250,000 copies. Those were the days when we used to go and buy records from shops, and I used to love that. Great, go in and listen to it on the head. That was brilliant, and. I think that the reason for that is because if you ever hear a piece of music that takes you to a place, no matter what song it is, it suddenly takes you to a place at a time when you remember something. And for me, that song did that, and still does that now. And I suppose that would probably be my answer then, is we don't talk anymore. Yeah.
One last question. Richard, it's got the microphone.
Was the song Congratulations written to celebrate his becoming a Christian, do you think?
I can't answer that for sure. I don't think so. Obviously, it came second in the Eurovision Song Contest in 1968, beaten by Spain by 1 point, which Cliff still believes was fixed. Because apparently, the King of Spain had the deciding vote. That's what's written. I couldn't answer. It is ultimately a love song. It's a song of love.
Yeah.
When I tell everyone that you're in love with me, you know. Maybe there's Christian writers behind it, but I couldn't say that for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we better call it a halt because I think Will needs to have a bit of a rest now. He's been,
No, I'm going.
First thing for a long while. But if you have any personal questions, if you want to know not just about Jesus, but Jesus in your life, then please also come and see one of us as well. And we'd love to talk with you and help you to know that he's with us, even through the dark and difficult times.
Amen.
Which is so grateful. Let's show our appreciation.
Thank you.